So if we can just, thanks. Okay, so if you just flick to the first slide, yeah. So we've done a little bit of the housekeeping now. I'll just try and get rid of that. Yeah, just about make sure you use the chat box. Absolutely ask your questions. Don't worry about that. I'll talk to you a little bit about my background, just so that you understand that the stuff I'm talking to you about today, I've probably been doing for 30 odd years. It doesn't mean I don't have conflict with people. It doesn't mean I don't have difficult people in my life. It just means that I have learned a few skills to deal with them. We're going to talk about how come some people are so difficult and others so easy. I'm going to talk a little bit about profiling. Some of you got the free profile, and that was really great. I want you to tell me in the chat box about your difficult person. You don't need to give me names, just the difficult person, the situation, and then I'll talk to you about basically 5 reasons why conflict occurs. And if you can understand those 5 reasons, it actually makes it easier for you to be able to deal with the situation. I want to talk to you about a vital decision when we're looking at conflict. I want to talk to you about possible reactions when you raise an issue with somebody, because there will be reactions. And I want to show you how easy it is actually to create a win-win outcome, even with people that you don't necessarily like very much. And then I want to talk to you about homework and what we do next. So if we just go to the next slide, Kitty, that would be great. Okay, so I started my working life in the Women's Royal Navy, and I worked for a group of men that were SAS. Now, these were Royal Marines, men who were brought together from anywhere in the UK, who may know each other, who may not know each other, but they had to form a team really quickly, and they had to get over personalities and, you know, I don't like you and you don't like me. We had to get over all of that stuff really quickly because their lives actually depended on each other. So I learned such a lot from working with those men. I then also trained, after my service time, I trained as a counsellor, marriage counselling as it was in those days. And during my training, my marriage broke up. So I pretty much failed that test. But I didn't. It was the best thing ever. And then I became a personnel manager, HR manager, and I've spent 30 years working with high-performing teams based really literally on the Royal Marines and training as a counsellor, because I specialise in working with teams in conflict and teams where maybe 1 or 2 people weren't performing. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'm just going to take my video off. Yeah, so how come some people are so easy to deal with and others are just plain awful? They're moody, they're difficult, they're awkward, or they're just plain old weird. How come that is so? Next slide, Okelia. Yeah, which brings us to profiling. Some of you had heard of profiling, some of you have been profiled, some of you hadn't heard of profiling. The very first person who created the concept of profiling was actually Hippocrates. And he was the founder of modern medicine. And basically, he based his treatment of people on 4 different blood types. And he called them words that mean nothing to us today. He called them choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, and melancholic. And I want you to see how those funny words translate into modern day profiling. So next slide, Okelia. So there we are. So some of you have been profiled using DISC. DISC is probably one of the most common profiling tools. There are hundreds of varieties, but DISC is probably one of the most prolific ones. So the words that Hippocrates used were the choleric, etc. So the choleric is D, that's the dominant personality. Sanguine is I. These are the people that we look at as salespeople. They're very bright and funny and lots of big personality. Phlegmatic is what we now know as steadiness. Those are the people that like harmony, that keep your team calm and will act as mediator and negotiator. And then the melancholics are what we know as C. which are the compliance people. These are the ones that usually start the day with a checklist and like to go through their checklist one by one, and they do not like being disturbed as they go through their checklist. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. And when we start to talk in terms of teams, you will see that every single profile is vital. No team can function without every single one of those types. So next slide, Orquídea, thanks. So I was working as a personnel manager in a manufacturing environment, and we had lots of problems. Teams that weren't working, departments that weren't performing, managers that were awful, you name it, we had it. And I had an opportunity to go along to a profiling thing, which I'd never heard of profiling, and it was called a DOPE test. And it was based exactly the same as the DISC and the Hippocrates. They're all based on the same concept. So these 4 types are really easy to teach. And I taught there are over 200 people in a manufacturing environment to understand where each of these people fit and the importance of them to the team. So we have the OWL, which are the detail people. We've already met those in DISC. The doves are the people. They're the ones that create the harmony. The peacocks are usually our salespeople, or the ones that bring lots of laughs and jokes. And then we have the eagles who get things done. Now, what I want you to understand about these 4 types is none of them really like each other. And my belief when working with teams is one of the first things I've ever said to teams is you don't have to like each other. You do have to understand how each of these people brings something to the team that the other people in the team don't have. So if we think about our OWL bringing the detail, they're the ones that will keep all the records. They're the ones that will keep the performance issues. They're the ones that will do the timekeeping and keep all the reports on, production and so forth. The doves are hopeless at detail. They're the ones that are usually sorting out somebody else's love life or worrying about somebody else's dad who's gone into hospital. The peacocks, we don't even know where they are. They're usually missing, but when they do show up, they're usually lots of fun. And then our eagles are the ones that are absolutely demanding, where is this and who is that and why are we not getting this out and this needs to be gotten out the door. So you see how they all bring a different skill. So if you look at the owls and the doves, these are our low assertive people. They are not known for making waves. If they're having a problem with anybody, they will not say a word. The dove might step in for somebody else who's having a problem with someone, but they will not speak up for themselves. The owls and the doves ask permission. They never, ever, ever make decisions without checking with somebody first. On the other side, with our eagles and our peacocks, these are the ones that are telling everybody what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and being really annoying to the people on the other side. Doves and peacocks make decisions based on emotion. You will hear them use words like, it feels like, or I get a sense that, or this doesn't feel right. Whereas the owls and the eagles make their decisions based on logic. So if you can see now the amount of confusion and discord that is possibly going on with all of those 4 different people, you can see how in teams or at home, some of those people will annoy you. It's usually our opposites. So if I think in terms of the workplace, the owl and the peacock do not like each other. The owls are usually saying to the peacocks, you haven't put in your paperwork this week. And the peacocks are saying, oh, for goodness sake, get a life. I'm out here busy trying to get sales to pay for you, sitting in your nice warm office. Do you see the conflict? So then we have the doves and the eagles are saying, we need more productivity and we need to get, and the doves are saying, what about the people? And the eagles are going, stuff the people. Do you see the potential for discord? And of course, as soon as I show people this, they go, oh, now I understand. Now I understand why that person drives me mad. Okay, next slide, Orquídea. Now, I found this on Twitter, which was just hilarious. I did actually do the owl version, the date version with a car company. So if you think in terms of cars, the top left-hand corner, which is our owl, they will buy a car that is absolutely fit for purpose. They do not do the frills. They don't want the racing wheels. They don't want the, fancy bits and pieces hanging off it. They just want the basic. And that car is a Lada. For any of the men on the thing, you will understand Lada. The bottom left-hand corner, which is our doves, there will be greenies probably, and they will probably bike to work. And that's okay, nothing wrong with that. We need to save the planet. The bottom right-hand corner, of course, are peacocks, and they will absolutely have a fast flash car, and it will be red if they've had to buy it for themselves. If it's a company car, they'll just take what they're given. And on the top, of course, we've got the eagles, and theirs will be the big black people carrier, the big V8, or I don't even understand engines. But do you see even there how different we all are? Okay, next slide. Now, I'm not going to talk throughout all of this. I'm going to make you do some work. So now I want you to go to the chat box. Now, the first thing I need to say is you have all those 4 traits in you. You are a mixture of all of them, but you will have a dominant trait and a least trait, a strength and a weakness. That's all of us. We all have a dominant trait. So what I want you to do in the chat box, I want you to tell me which is your highest trait. Are you an owl? We'll use the bird version because it's easier. Are you an owl? Are you a dove? Are you a peacock? Are you an eagle? Tell me who you are. Dove, okay? Dove, dove. I wouldn't expect anything different from the fact that a lot of you are in the nursing profession. Dove, dove. You don't necessarily want eagles looking after you if you're not feeling very well. They'll be saying, hurry up and get well. Owl, cool. Owl, yeah, detail people, that's fine, we need them. Did this multiple times. Peacock, yay, it's okay, we love our peacocks. Any more confessions? Owl, yeah, cool, nothing wrong with any of them. Dove. Okay, so knowing your type, what I want to say to you is whoever you are, it's absolutely okay. There's no right or wrong, there's no better or worse. The point here is you will deal with conflict in certain ways. So if we go to the next slide, okay, dear. Owls, I've said owls will take care of the details. Doves will look after the team. Peacocks will generate energy, fun, and ideas, and eagles will get things done. Next slide. Weakness. Now, when we come to conflict or having to speak to somebody, owls will avoid conflict like the plague. If you're thinking of office people, they will have their doors shut. You won't see them. If they're stressed about something, you will not see them. You will not hear them. They will just go to ground. Now, our doves can be a bit passive-aggressive. Sorry, darlings, I know there's a lot of you. Doves are the people who they never seem to complain, never seem to complain, and then all of a sudden they'll lose the plot. They'll go absolutely off the Richter scale. How dare you? And I am so sick of this, and I'm fed up, and blah, 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 and off they go. And we're all standing back going, oh my God, what just happened there? That is because doves will take just so much, and then they've had enough. Now, with doves, you will see tears. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having a good cry. Male and female. I've sat with a lot of male doves and had to pass the tissues, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We need to get the aggro out of our systems. Peacocks can be drama queens. You will hear the doors slamming. You will hear the things being banged around. I worked for one boss who regularly used to throw phones at people in the days when they were still attached to the wall. So you can imagine the damage we used to have there. And of course, eagles can just simply be intimidating. So that's our way of dealing with conflict. Now, none of those work. None of those work. They solve nothing. So I've worked for 30 odd years teaching people this. We have to find a way to deal with conflict that doesn't do any of those 4 things. Okay, next slide, Okelia. Now, I want you now to go to the chat box and I want you to define for me your difficult person, their personality trait. And we can only do one at this stage. Just pick the one person who's getting at your nose the most right now and tell me what their bird sign is. Who are you dealing with? Talk to me. A peacock, a nasty eagle, a dove, another dove, eagle, owl. Managing a peacock, difficult. Eagle, yeah, quite scary. Now, what I now want you to tell me is, what is your relationship to that person? Now, remember, nobody else sees this but me. Is it your boss? Is it a co-worker? Is it your mum? Is it a sister? Is it a friend? Is it a neighbor? Could you put that in the chat box for me? A co-worker. Keep them coming for me. A flatmate. A co-worker. An ex-direct manager, my ex-wife, oh, they're really difficult. Industry colleague, a co-worker, manager and a colleague. So, having defined your personality and having defined the person you're having conflict personality, are you already starting to see a little bit of an aha? Ah, now I understand why I'm having problems with that person. Managing a dove who's an employee. Yeah. So I ask the question again. Now you've defined your personality, and now you've defined the personality of the person you're having conflict with. Have you got a little bit of an aha as to why you're having conflict with them? Are you understanding that they're an opposite? Are you understanding that they're the same as you? Are you understanding that they're not a very good listener, or you're coming from a logic point of view and they're likely to burst into tears? Are you starting to see a little bit of an understanding? Okay, all right, and we'll move on to the next slide. A resident, I think there's a problem with a resident, yeah. Okay, so now what I need you to do is, remember, I'm the only person that sees this a little bit because, yeah. Tell me the actual situation. What is the actual situation you are having with the person who's driving you nuts? Put that in the chat box. Remember, because I need this for tomorrow when I go through all of this. Some of you have already told me, but some of you haven't, because I need this information so I can give you some better solutions tomorrow. What is the actual situation? Why are they driving you mad? Ah, okay. I've just realized somebody's just let me know that people can see each other's answers. Okay, so just make sure you don't use anyone's names, obviously. Refusing to follow instructions. Okay, settlement suggestions met with opposition. Manipulative behavior. Speaking above others during a general discussion. No, I might just go back to that one. Okay, so Orchidea has just said, if you just want me to see it, don't send it to everyone. Just send a chat message to Anne Andrews only. Okay. talking about other people, listening to other people's whinging and whining. Team member, peacock, not disciplined, with competing reports and deadlines, failure to follow procedure, disruptive in meetings. That you've just defined a peacock. That's an absolute classic peacock. Passive aggressive, psychological harassment to force you into a specific action. Cursing people on the phone in an open office. None of this is okay. You know that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. None of this is okay. Now, some of these I will dig down into a little bit more detail tomorrow. I will pick up all of the things, and this report will go to everybody, but I'll give you some actual suggestions as to what to do and what to say. Okay. All right, so if we flick to the next slide. So 5 reasons conflict occurs. And these are all of them. If you can define the reason, then you will understand how to be able to deal with it. So you and I have got different information. You and I have different goals and agendas. You and I have different styles of communication. We've already seen that, shouting above everybody else. You and I have got clashing personalities. We're opposites. You and I have baggage. Now, that's mostly in a family, not always, but mostly in a family where, you know, I was invited to so-and-so's wedding and my sister wasn't, or something, I don't know, and I've never been forgiven. So have a think about each of those 5 and tell me which one you think it is. Do you think the problem you're having with the other person is you've got different information? Do you think it's that you've got different agendas? Do you think it's because you've got different styles? Do you think it's because you clash personality-wise? Or do you think it's because between the 2 of you, you have baggage? If you can define this, it helps you with the next stage. Not afraid to be a fraud, is brave enough to get away with it. Everyone too scared to confront her. Discussing resonance. Okay, and as I say, feel free, if you don't feel inclined to put this in today, you all have my email address. Feel free to send your challenge to me, and I will make sure I give every single one of you a suggestion or an idea as to how to start this discussion, because I know it isn't easy. I've trained in this stuff, I've taught this stuff, and it still isn't easy. So you've got different goals and agendas and possibly a personality clash. Yeah. Okay, so if we flip to the next slide, Arcadia. Now, here's the biggest one. My question to you is, how important is this person to you? So think through the relationship. If it's a co-worker, is he or she likely to leave to solve the problem? Are you likely to leave to solve the problem? If you are going to be stuck working together, how important is it? On a scale of 0 to 10, how important? 0 being not at all important, 10 being absolutely vital. Give me some scores. Wow. So someone here saying because of too much stress, they ended up having a miscarriage. Too much work stress and too much workload. Now, I'd like to bet, not going to mention name, that this person is a dove. Our doves just keep taking and taking and taking and taking until they can take no longer. All right, so give me a 6. So we've got a 6. How important? Not being not at all important at all, 10 being vital. A 6, we've got a 6. A 1, not important really at all. A 10, vital. So you definitely have to find a way to work with that one. A 10, very important. A 6. A 0, a total waste of space. Any more? Okay, now the other thing I want to say here is my belief over the long period of my life is that if being an eagle, I probably tend to put anyone who can potentially make me suffer. Okay, that's right. As long as you know yourself, that's really good. Team member not meeting KPIs after 4 years and a lot of coaching. Okay, not good. All right. So what I was going to say was, if you are having conflict with a person and you don't learn how to deal with that person now, you will meet that type again and again and again. So it's really important that you learn now how to deal with such people, so the next time you meet that person, it's not as difficult. And the time after that that you meet that same person, it's not difficult at all, because you know how to deal with them. If we don't learn how to say what we need to say in a way that can be heard, in a way that you get to put your point of view, in a way that a person you can at least have a conversation about finding some ways through this, you will keep meeting that type again and again and again. The number of times I've seen CVs where I've seen people say, so I would say, why are you leaving? I hate my boss. So if I got to interview that person, I'd say, okay, so tell me about your boss. And they say, okay. And they tell me, and I'd say, okay, so what about the job before that? Oh yeah, well, the boss there was pretty awful too. You will start to see you have a pattern of the same type of person for a variety of reasons. It's because if we don't learn how to deal with them, we will keep meeting them again and again. So it really is a good idea to practice on these people, so that then when you meet your next person, you've had your practice. Okay. All right. So next slide, okay. Right. So I want you to think about now, you're going to sit with this person and you're going to say, I'm having difficulty when you blah, blah, blah. What likely reaction are you going to get from this person? Pop it into the chat box. So someone's just said, after this incident, I realize now, unfortunately, it was too late, but now I'm going to give priority to my family and myself. Yeah, well done. Not my job, dismissive, okay? Apology, sorry about that. But then do they change? It's easy to say, oh, I'm really sorry, but then to keep doing what you've always done. How are they going to, excuses? Well, that's a big one. Yeah. Oh, no, I can't do that because, no, you don't understand my situation. No, I can't do that. Attack, anger, and blame someone else. Absolutely. Anyone going to get tears? Aggression? Some people are very good at just simply changing the subject. Anyone talk about it? No. Or putting it right back on you. Say, okay, well, you're not so perfect. Tears following an apology. I ask again, does the person change the behavior? An apology is good, but it's worth nothing if they don't intend to change the behavior. Change the subject, yeah. Blame somebody else. Still fail to change the behavior. I was about to say reversing the situation. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, you're not so perfect. Well, it's all very well you picking on me, but what about you? You didn't do this and this and this and that. Yeah. these are all pretty tricky conversations to have. Did the crocodile tears on a TV interview, so fake. Yeah. All pretty awful. So we're going to move now to, and listen, remember I chat with her, but via email only. Yeah, unfortunately, chatting via email gives people such an out. When we're having this conversation, which says this behavior no longer works for me, I have to sit with you eyeball to eyeball. I have to sit with you face to face. And as I say, this stuff isn't easy. So what I'm going to ask you to do for this next week, until we have a more in-depth conversation next week, we're going to just move to a planning stage, because the last thing in the world I want you to do is to go into somebody and to somebody's office, or to call them into your room or whatever and say, right, we need to talk, because you've already set it off on the wrong foot. So I'm going to teach you the nuances of what to say, when to say it, and how to say it next week. This session is just for you to start to think in terms of, how do I plan this situation? How do I prepare for it? What will I do when they, or if they? Because the more preparation you do for such a situation, the easier it is when you actually sit with them knee to knee, or chair to chair, or whatever. So if you'd like to just move to the next slide, Arcadia. So remember, this is just the planning stage. These are the most difficult conversations we are going to ever have in our lives, to be honest. And nobody's taught us how to have them. Nobody's taught us what to say. Nobody has taught us what to do if it goes wrong. One of the most difficult situations or jobs I've ever had, being in personnel and HR, was dealing with poor performance. And of course, managers would say, oh, look, I've got this employee and they're just hopeless and they're rubbish and I just want rid of them. And I say, okay, well, before you decide that you want rid of them, how about we have a little look at what's going on? Because it costs an awful lot of time and money to replace a person. They say, oh, no, I just want rid of them. No, I want for me to understand what's going on, because maybe we can turn this person around. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, we've turned people around. So you will get a recording of this anyway. What I want you to do is I want you to sit with a piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to write what it is you want that person doing differently. What do you want them doing differently? Be really clear. No waffle, no fluff around the edges. I need you to get your reports to me by 9 a.m. on Monday morning. Absolutely no ambiguity there. Or I need you to pay your rent by blah, blah, blah. It isn't up for discussion. Define the problem. The problem is, by you not getting your report in on time, it means we can't add that to the results for the week, and we don't know if we've met our targets this week. If you don't pay your rent on time, it means that we risk being thrown out by the landlord because we can't cover your rent. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's state without ambiguity, without any fluff, without any frills. This is the problem. This is what I need you to do differently. Now, always consider their point of view. Ask them, tell me what's going on for you. Help me understand. There might be, and there often is, a very genuine reason why they're doing what they're doing. They might have a gambling problem in the case of the rent, in which case you don't want them anyway. They might have home issues, which is why they're, not getting their stuff to you on time. I don't know. But please find out what the other person's point of view is. Because quite often, if I understand your point of view, It doesn't mean I'm going to change my stance. I still need you to do whatever it is I want you to do. But at least now I understand where you're coming from. In other words, you know, it's the owl peacock, it's the dove eagle. So before you have a discussion with a person, have some thoughts on workable compromises. What do you think are some workable compromises that you could suggest? How about we, or what if we, or how would it be if we could get, or what could we do differently to support you in this? Or, you know, in other words, look at some middle ground. It's easy to go in and wipe somebody out. It's easy to go in and say, look, you're not performing and we're going to start the warning process, or we don't want you in our flat and we want you to just bugger off, basically. You probably do. But at least this way, you're practicing a conversation, because you never know, your next flatmate might be worse. I hope not, but there we are. What are some workable compromises that you can put into the mix so that they could say, yes, I could do that, or no, I can't do that, but I could do that. Now, in some conversations, you have to simply plant seeds. What do I mean by that? One of the problems I had on another webinar I was running was a young woman who was one of a family of 4 siblings. She was expected to do all the running around for her mum, who was now starting to suffer ill health and had lots of hospital appointments, lots of doctor's appointments. And she was the one that everyone said, oh, well, you know, she can do that. Well, hang on a second. I have a life. I have a business to run too. So in her case, what we taught her to do was how to plant some seeds. And by doing that, she would say, look, to the siblings, maybe invite them around for coffee. I'm starting to have difficulty with being the only person that can take my mum to the hospital and doctor's appointments. And I need you to understand that. And I need for you all to think about how can we all take a share in this. So she was planting the seeds. She wasn't actually exactly saying, look, I'm not going to do this anymore. Or, you know, you're a load of wastrels and I hate all your guts and I'm never going to speak to you again. She was offering her pain, her challenges, and saying, what are your thoughts on how we can do this? And the amazing thing in that situation, one of her brothers, he said, my wife would love to take her. She feels that you just, oh, here we go. She feels that you just hog my mum and she never gets a look in. And it's like, I didn't know that. I just assumed that, you know, it was our job, the siblings. So don't leap into a situation with a foregone conclusion is what I'm saying. Give a discussion, you know, give an opportunity to say, have you thought of, or what if we, or could we? Okay. And of course, the big one is pick your battles. You might find with some of your situations, there are many layers of complexity. It might be one thing, but there might be something underneath that, and there might be something underneath that, and there might be something underneath that. Pick the one that's the most important, or perhaps even pick the one that's maybe the easiest to have the discussion with the person to say, this isn't working for me. And then let them put their 2p worth in. Pick your battles. I always believe in living to fight another day. It's really easy to go into one of these conversations and say, oh, well, that's it. You can take it or leave it. And they may say, well, I'll just leave it. Thank you. So leave it that you've got an opportunity to go back and say, did you think about, could we revisit that? Is it possible for you and I to find a way that we can do this differently? Do you see where I'm coming from? Live to fight another day. But absolutely, absolutely, absolutely know what you will do and what you won't do, what you can do, what you can't do, what you will say yes to, what you won't say yes to. Does that make sense? So talk to me. Think about a situation, think about your situation. If you followed that little trail, could you end up with a situation that says, we can work this out. I don't have to like you. I don't want to spend my life with you, but we have a situation here where it would be really good if we could work this out. Does that help? We tend to think that this is an all or nothing situation. You know, I've got to sort this out and I've got to sort it today. No, I can sort it by just planting a seed and saying that this is not really working terribly well for us. Or in some of the cases that I've seen coming through, we've actually had this conversation a couple of times and you promised me that you're going to change, but then nothing happens. So you need to talk to me about that because I can't keep having this conversation. We have to find a solution. Does that help? Cool. If we move to the next slide, which is really the what next. I'm a great believer. We've talked about who needs to talk to you first. We've talked about plan what you want to say. We talked about their profile and their likely reactions. But a big part of what I've taught over the years, because as I say, I was in a manufacturing environment where we had all manner of problems, you know, employees that wouldn't show up at all, employees that would show up late, employees that would show up still drunk from the night before. And I've just taken the job as a personnel manager for the manufacturing environment. And as a personnel manager, I was always passionate about what I call walking the floor. So every morning, as soon as I came in, I would just check in, we'd have the management meeting, and then I would walk the factory. I would just walk around and say hi to everybody and how you doing? And I would see in a corner office 3 supervisors sitting having, I don't know, sitting talking. And after 2 or 3 days, I got really curious as to what they were doing. And so I asked the factory manager, what are the supervisors doing in that little office over there? He said, oh, they'll be role playing. I said, what's that? I'd never even heard of role playing. And they said, well, they've been trained that if we have a situation on the factory floor that they have to speak to an employee about something, it could go horribly wrong if they haven't role play with somebody first. They might go in angry, they might go in scared, they might go in without having got all their facts. And so 3 of them would sit. So one would play the part of the manager, one would play the part of the employee, and the other would play the part of an observer. And they would have the discussion, the manager and employee would have the discussion, and the person playing the employee role was told, be realistic. This is a practice. They want to know, what would you say if, you know, whatever. And then the observer would give the manager feedback. You need to be careful about that, or you need to watch how you say that, or think about saying blah, blah differently. I want you, please. Now, some of you, this isn't appropriate, but for a lot of you it is. I would like you to practice your conversation with someone before you have the conversation. Because believe me, if you make your mistakes with a person that's not involved, you're a whole lot more prepared to have the actual conversation than if you hadn't had it. You wouldn't drive a car without having some driver's lessons. You wouldn't, you know, start using a piece of equipment if you hadn't read the manual. And yet we tend to think I should be able to sit with that person and say, listen, you need to get your act together, and not expect consequences. And then we wonder why we don't do it very well, or because it's so awful, we don't do it at all. So I'm going to ask you this week to role play with somebody, right? Your husband or your partner or your sister or a friend, and say, look, I've got to talk to so-and-so, and this is what I'm thinking of saying. Give me some feedback as to how you think that would go. Now, if you can get 3 people together, that's brilliant. If you can't, 2 people is fine. You know, with my husband, if I've got a particular challenge, I'll say, look, this is what I'm thinking of saying. And he's been in management too. So he'll say, oh, you know, be careful with that. Or you're coming across as a bit bossy, Anne. Oh, who, me? Because I'm definitely over the right-hand side of the quadrant, a bit bossy. So I practice before I then sit with the person. Now, big one, be really, really clear on the importance of the relationship. It is so easy to smash a relationship. It is so easy to have somebody storm out and say, well, you can shove your job. And then we've got to go through the process of trying to find somebody. And the number of times I've worked with a manager who said, oh, yeah, well, I got rid of them. So, okay, well, so how's the new person working out? And they go very quiet and say, I think they're just as bad as the one, or worse, they're worse than the one I've just let go of. Just think that one through. You know, no one's perfect. I'm not saying that we can let people get away with stuff. I'm not saying that at all. I'm a great believer in tough love. This is the problem. These are some ideas I have on how we sort it out. Talk to me. We need to have this sorted. I'm not here to say, let people get away with stuff. I'm not saying that at all. But we need to have the conversation that says, this is not okay. Talk to me. Absolutely prepare for those reactions. Now, it's really interesting because I was working with a female manager and she said, I have to talk to one of my supervisors or team leaders, and it's a man, and I'm terrified that he will burst into tears because he's a lovely guy, he's very sensitive, but he's letting his team get away with murder. I said, okay, so what would you do if he burst into tears? She said, I wouldn't have a clue. I would not know what to do. I said, okay, if someone bursts into tears, simply pass them the tissues. Sit quietly until they've regained their composure. That's okay. And say something like, look, I understand. I know that this is painful, but how can we find a way to work this out? So in other words, you guide them through to a space where you can help them with whatever the situation is. Don't be afraid of tears. Consider the workable compromises. You have a think through, if you were in that situation, what would be some things you would want the person to offer you? Think that one through, but be absolutely clear on your bottom line. No one should take abuse. No one should put up with somebody slacking off. No one should put up with a co-worker treating you like dirt. No one should put up with somebody not doing their job. No one should put up with somebody not paying their rent. Be absolutely clear on your bottom line. But my big one, as I've said, is please don't do anything yet, because I want you to do this planning. I'll hunt out, I think I might have a form. I usually have forms for everything. I'll see if I've got one. Okay, so question time. Fears, doubts, rubbish, that'll never work. It might have worked there, but it won't work here. Talk to me. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this, guys? Talk to me.